Welcome back to the channel, folks, and back to the rain-soaked streets of New York City, where every shadow hides a secret and every gunfight is a dance with death. In this world of crime, betrayal, and shattered dreams, one man walks the thin line between justice and damnation. That man's name is Max Payne. I first played Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne, after being completely hooked on the original, but back then I wasn't sure how to feel about it. It had everything I thought I wanted: sharper gameplay, more polished visuals, and a slightly more mature story, but something about it always felt different. I find myself asking, does it truly surpass its predecessor, or does it lose something in refining its formula? It's a feeling I also had with Max Payne 3, for very obvious reasons, considering how different it is to the first two games. Though I still consider it a good game, just not necessarily a great Max Payne game. Developed by Remedy Entertainment and published by Rockstar Games in 2003, Max Payne 2 takes everything that made its predecessor a cult classic and refines it. The film noir influences are stronger than ever, drenched in cynicism, poetic narration, and existential dread. But this time there's something more, an undercurrent of romance twisted by fate and violence. The game proudly builds itself as a film noir love story, but in Max's world, love is just another tragedy waiting to happen. Max Payne 2 is a game that has both grown on me and left me conflicted. It's undeniably a fantastic third-person shooter, but something about its approach to storytelling and tone feels different from the first game. So today, let's step into the darkness once more, exploring what makes Max Payne 2 a standout sequel, but also where it stumbles a little, and why it doesn't always hit the same as the original game.
They were all dead. The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger, and then it was over.
Before diving into the fall of Max Payne, let's briefly recap the events of the first game. Max Payne was a man with nothing left to lose. His wife and infant daughter were murdered, their deaths tied to a designer drug called Valkyr, a highly addictive narcotic flooding the streets of New York City. Seeking justice, Max transferred from the NYPD to the DEA, going deep undercover to expose the drug's source and hunt down those responsible. But the investigation took a dark turn. He got too close, was framed for murdering his fellow DEA agent Alex Balder, and suddenly found himself on the run, with both the police and the criminal underworld gunning for him. Max launched a one-man war against the Mafia, cutting through its ranks in search of answers. His search eventually led him to Mona Sachs, a contract killer he met in the gothic nightclub Ragnarok. She had her own reasons for revenge. The same man Max was after, Angelo Punchinello, had been married to her sister. Despite knowing better, he found himself drawn to her, though their paths would only briefly align. In his relentless pursuit of the truth, Max made an uneasy alliance with Vladimir Lem, a smooth-talking Russian mobster who had his own agenda. With Vlad's help, Max carved his way to the heart of the criminal empire, only to realize that the corruption ran much deeper than the Mafia. The government was involved. A shadowy figure named Alfred Woden finally revealed the full extent of the conspiracy. Both he and the mastermind behind Valkyr, Nicole Horn, were members of a secret society known as the Inner Circle. Years earlier, while working for the district attorney's office, Max's wife had accidentally come across documents that exposed Horn's illegal operations. That mistake cost her life. Now Woden offered Max a deal: kill Horn, get his revenge. In the end, Max got what he came for. He confronted Horn and entered a reign with a hail of bullets. But revenge wasn't victory. As the police surrounded him, he surrendered without resistance, knowing Woden would keep his promise. The charges would disappear, and his name cleared for the murder of Alex Balder. Max would walk free, but it wasn't over. He was still alive. His loved ones were still dead. And in the cold, empty streets of New York City, the pain remained.
God, I turned out to be such a damsel in distress.
They were all dead. Love kills. Did I love her? Was there a choice? The past is a gaping hole. You try to run from it. The more you run, the deeper, more terrible it grows behind you. Its edges yawning at your heels.
Like its predecessor, Max Payne 2 begins in media res, throwing you into the aftermath of a violent and tragic series of events before rewinding to show how it all unfolded. It begins on a stormy night at an unknown manor, with Max reflecting bleakly on everything that's happened, hinting at the deaths of several characters as the police swarm the area. But instead of rewinding to the very start, the game jumps back to a crucial turning point, Max awakening in the hospital, battered, bleeding, and accused of murdering his partner Valerie Winterson. From there, it pulls us back even further back to the true beginning, unraveling the chain of violence, betrayal, and heartbreak that led him here. Just like before, the structure reinforces the idea that for Max, the cycle of pain and loss is inescapable, no matter how many times he tries to outrun it. Visually, Max Payne 2: The Fall of Max Payne is a step up from its predecessor, refining the gritty aesthetic of the first game, while incorporating new technology to make its world feel more immersive. While still set in the same bleak and crime-ridden New York City, the sequel's improved lighting, reflections, and particle effects makes its environments feel more atmospheric than ever. One of the biggest upgrades comes from the improvements to the Havoc physics engine, which changes the way objects react to the player and how NPCs behave during shootouts. Gone are the stiff and pre-scripted death animations of the original game. Now enemies crumple and ragdoll sorta realistically based on where they're shot, often crashing into objects or collapsing against walls. While this adds a new level of unpredictability to shootouts, it also leads to some hilariously unintended results. Bad guys getting flung into furniture, tumbling downstairs in awkward ways, or just flopping around like ragdolls on ice. But when combined with the smoother animations and the cinematic slow motion of bullet time, the game's action sequences still look stylish. Character models have also been improved. In the original Max Payne, Remedy had to work with a very limited budget, so they used their own staff, friends, and family as models, including lead writer Sam Lake as the face of Max Payne, giving us that now iconic and goofy grin. The lack of resources meant characters had somewhat stiff and expressionless faces, though this wasn't too distracting since the game relied on graphic novel-style cutscenes instead of in-engine cinematics. The sequel, with its larger budget, introduces a bit more variety in facial animations, making characters feel more expressive during both the graphic novel cutscenes and the occasional in-engine cutscene. Nowhere is this change more apparent than with Max himself. Remedy opted for a more professional approach this time around, and with a proper budget, Sam Lake's trademark smirk has been replaced by actor Timothy Gibbs, giving Max a more rugged, wore-down look that better fits his world-weary demeanor. Thankfully, James McCaffrey returns to voice Max, bringing back his signature gravelly narration and dry delivery that defines the character. Other returning characters have also been updated visually, most notably Mona Sachs, who now fully embodies the classic femme fatale archetype, modeled after actress and model Kathy Tong. Her new design gives her a more traditionally striking, sultry, and enigmatic presence, a perfect fit for the noir-inspired love story at the heart of Max Payne 2. It's a fitting evolution that aligns with the sequel's more serious tone, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss the slightly goofier, more unassuming look of the original cast. The first game had a unique charm, walking a fine line between parody and homage to film noir. While the sequel leans harder into its cinematic influences, it loses just a bit of that quirky, over-the-top personality that made the original so distinctive. The story is once again primarily told through graphic novel panels with voiceover narration, maintaining the series' signature style. However, Remedy expands on this format by incorporating more traditional cutscenes, adding more cinematic weight to certain scenes. While the first game drew heavy inspiration from Norse mythology and classic hard-boiled detective fiction, with a bit of John Woo's cinematic action sprinkled in, Max Payne 2 shifts its focus towards tragic love stories, embracing its film noir roots even more. The relationship between Max and Mona is at the heart of the narrative, and the visuals work hard to emphasize this, whether through moody lighting, evocative camera angles, or the way characters interact in moments of tension and intimacy. Overall, Max Payne 2 takes the foundation of its predecessor and elevates it, delivering a more visually refined and immersive experience. The improvement in physics, character models, and overall presentation make for a game that still holds up remarkably well.
Oh, detective, I've got something for you.
Max Payne 2 sticks to the same third-person shooter formula as its predecessor. Fast, brutal gunfights against an endless wave of enemies. Max's arsenal returns in full force, letting you wield everything from dual pistols to shotguns and assault rifles. Grenades and Molotovs also make a comeback, perfect for wiping out groups of enemies. Weapons and ammo carry over between levels, though Max occasionally loses his arsenal due to story-driven setbacks. Ammo is plentiful, keeping the action flowing, while painkillers remain your lifeline, allowing you to stock up to 8 at a time. Like before, they don't work instantly, but gradually refill your health, forcing you to plan ahead instead of relying on quick heals mid-firefight. Where Max Payne 2 truly sets itself apart is how it refines the bullet time mechanic. In the original game, you had to earn every second of slow-motion combat by killing enemies to refill the meter, but in Max Payne 2, bullet time slowly regenerates on its own, removing the need to constantly rack up kills just to keep using it. Additionally, shoot dodging Max's signature dive no longer consumes bullet time, letting you fling yourself into gunfights without worrying about depleting your slow motion reserves. A new system further changes the flow of combat. Killing enough enemies while in bullet time now turns the meter yellow, signifying that Max is fully locked in. At this point, enemies slow down even more, but Max moves at normal speed, making it easier than ever to dodge bullets, line up headshots, and clear rooms. While it's a major improvement to gameplay, it comes at a cost: difficulty. So I didn't realize this until I read the comments of my Max Payne 1 review, but I unintentionally made the game way harder by not capping the frame rate. This broke the physics, shortened bullet time and shoot dodging, and turned the later levels into a brutal quick save marathon. After replaying the first game properly, it was still tough, but not as punishing. That said, it's still noticeably harder than Max Payne 2. Enemies in the sequel are aggressive, and certain encounters can be brutal, but the enhanced bullet time system gives players a massive advantage, especially on the base difficulty. Unlike the first game, where bullet time was a resource to manage, Max Payne 2 expects you to use it constantly. The ability to stay in the zone longer, move at full speed while enemies are trapped in slow motion, and regenerate bullet time naturally makes even the toughest fights far more manageable. Because of this, I barely use shoot dodging at all compared to the first game. Bullet time is so effective now, there's rarely a reason to dive around like a maniac when you can just activate it and gun down enemies with pinpoint precision. Max Payne 2 isn't a total cakewalk, I still died plenty, but if you're looking for the same level of tension and methodical gunplay as the first game, hard-boiled mode is the way to go. Unlocked by beating the game once, or using cheats. Hard-boiled mode removes the base game's adaptive difficulty, which secretly hands out extra ammo and painkillers if you die too often, and enemies will hit harder, making it the closest you'll get to replicating the challenge of the original. Even with these changes, shootouts in Max Payne 2 remain a satisfying experience. With all that out of the way, let's dive into the story.
We're losing him.
Multiple gunshot wounds, pupils blown, head trauma, God only knows what
He's in
else.
shock. Start 2 large bore IVs, get him to ICU.
He's not responding. This guy is a train wreck. We're losing.
When I woke up in the hospital earlier tonight, I thought it couldn't get any worse. I opened my eyes, and everything slid into focus. She was dead. I was hurt. My crime, what I had done, was like a hungry pit behind me. I had to run, get as far away from it as possible.
Max Payne 2 is set 2 years after the events of the first game. Thanks to Alfred Woden's influence, Max is back in the NYPD as a homicide detective, cleared of any wrongdoing. But that hasn't erased the ghosts of his past. After the game's opening, the story rewinds to earlier that night. Max wakes up in a hospital bed, dazed and battered. He's alive, but he shouldn't be. His head pounds, the drugs clouding his thoughts. Disoriented, he stumbles out of bed, throws on his clothes, and makes his way through the eerily empty halls. Strange visions and distorted voices haunt him, remnants of trauma, both physical and emotional. A ringing phone snaps him back to reality. For a moment, he hallucinates the same message Nicole Horn left the night his family was murdered. Then, over the intercom, a doctor's voice reports that the detective brought in earlier was dead on arrival. That detective is Valerie Winterson, Max's partner. He killed her. Or he thinks he did. The hallucinations make it ambiguous at first. Pressing forward, Max finds a janitor lying lifeless on the floor. Before he can process the scene, an armed man steps in, radioing someone. He's here to kill Max. But Payne is faster. One squeeze of the trigger and the assassin drops before he gets a chance to fire. Moving cautiously, Max reaches the hospital's reception area and steps into an elevator, hoping for a clean escape. No such luck. When the doors slide open, he's met by his boss, Lieutenant Jim Bravura, who immediately starts throwing accusations. The NYPD believe Max killed Winterson. Before he can even respond, Bravura is suddenly gunned down in front of him. A split second later, a bullet ruptures an oxygen tank, triggering an explosion that rips through the adjacent elevator. Somehow, Max survives. Climbing through the wreckage, he makes his way to the morgue, where he stands over Winterson's body. It's real. He did kill her, and now someone else is coming for him. But this wasn't really the beginning. The scene shifts again, taking us back to the previous night. A call comes in, shots fired at a warehouse owned by Max's former ally turned semi-legitimate businessman, Vladimir Lem. Part of the Russian mob, he briefly appeared in the first game, joining forces to fight their mutual enemy, the Panchello crime family. Without hesitation, Max responds and races to the scene. As he arrives, Max calls in for backup after hearing the distant echo of gunfire and screams inside the warehouse. Sneaking inside, the sounds weren't exactly what he expected. Turns out the eerie sounds are just the TV, playing the latest episode of Dick Justice. While Max Payne 2 dials back the sillier parody elements woven into the first game's narrative, it makes up for it with a lineup of fictional in-game TV shows. Each one cleverly references events from both Max Payne and its sequel, blending them with different TV genres and settings.
The Pink Bird Mental Institute. Mira's men pretended to be hospital wardens.
The flesh. I think I died. I think I'm dead. I don't know. Dead.
The first you'll come across after leaving the hospital is Address Unknown, a Twin Peaks-inspired mystery thriller about a man hunting the killer who murdered his wife. Then there's Dick Justice, a crime drama mixed with elements of Shaft and other blaxploitation movies. Lords and Ladies takes a more dramatic turn, parodying Victorian-era soap operas, while Captain Baseball Bat Boy, a cartoon that had its comic strips appear in the first game, makes a return in animated form. Further in the warehouse, Max runs into a man claiming to be a cleaner, hired to tidy up the place. The guy is immediately suspicious as he casually brings up that there's a gun workshop upstairs, like it's an ordinary thing for a warehouse to have. Unsurprisingly, the guy is dirty, pulling a gun on Max the second he has his back turned. After taking him out and his buddy nearby, it's clear that this isn't a break-in, it's a hit job. Working his way deeper into the warehouse, Max will fight more cleaners and finds several dead bodies until he stumbles upon two cleaners holding a woman at gunpoint. She's Annie Finn, a gunsmith that works for Vlad. Before Max can intervene, they execute her. As Max continues clearing the warehouse, he's reunited with a ghost from his past, Mona Sachs.
Come on! Finally.
Hey!
Mona?
Max, we gotta stop meeting like this.
Unfortunately, it's a brief reunion. Mona vanishes as quickly as she appeared. Max cuts through the last of the cleaners before rushing outside, just in time to see a black van trying to escape. He tries to stop it, but nearly gets run over in the process. His life saved at the last second by the arrival of his partner, Valerie Winterson. Valerie is Max's complete opposite, a straight-laced cop who follows the book to the letter. She's a far better detective than him by his own admission. There are hints later on that she might have had feelings for Max, but nothing ever came of it. Beneath her tough exterior, she's a caring woman, raising her disabled blind son alone while balancing the pressures of her job. Regardless of how it happened, Max carries immense guilt for killing her. Back at the station, Lieutenant Bravura isn't impressed with Max's actions. Reviewing the evidence, he believes 3 different groups were involved in the warehouse incident. First, the dead employees, all with ties to Russian organized crime. Second, the Mafia. And third, the group posing as cleaners. None of it adds up, so Bravura puts Max on the case while assigning Winterson to a homicide investigation involving Senator Gate. Max glances at the prime suspect in Winterson's case and immediately recognizes Mona, but he keeps quiet, not mentioning that he ran into her. Searching for leads, Max comes up empty. He digs into Kaufman, the name he overheard in the warehouse, along with the squeaky cleaning company, but finds nothing useful. With nowhere else to turn, he decides to pay his old friend Vlad a visit to get his side of the story. Max heads to Vodka, a high-end restaurant Vlad is building from the remains of Ragnarok, the gothic nightclub from the first game where we fought Psycho V junkie Jack Lupino. But as soon as Max reaches the front doors, gunfire erupts from inside. Vlad calls out to Max for help. He's under attack and pinned down. Max moves around to the back of the building and makes his way inside, encountering a swarm of mafioso assassins as he moves through the area. He'll stumble onto Vlad's office, finding a strange drawing of Captain Baseball Bat Boy on a whiteboard. Max will also listen to a message on Vlad's phone where he reassures his girlfriend that he'll survive the attack from the mob, especially now that Max is there to have his back. Nice to see Vlad put so much faith in him, but I guess Max did kill like 100 mob goons in the last game, so it's not unwarranted. Pushing forward, Max stumbles upon one of Vlad's men fighting off the mobsters, a guy by the name of Mike the Cowboy. After Max assists him, Mike introduces himself and the two team up to go save Vlad. Several times throughout Max Payne 2, Max will team up with random NPCs to fight through a level together. These moments are usually pretty brief, but your partners do prove useful. They aren't invincible though, and can die, but thankfully you aren't required to keep them alive like an escort mission, which was good news for me, as despite how capable he was, Mike ended up dying towards the end of the level. I was a bit bummed, since the cowboy was a pretty friendly and chill guy. More so when I found out he'd reappear later in the game if he didn't die here. Oh well. Das Vidanya, comrade. His presence was sorely missed in this final area, as the large group of enemies combined with them having the high ground made it tough to take them out and find a spot to avoid their shots. First real challenge that felt like the encounters of the first game, as I died dozens of times trying to get through this part. By the time I finally break through, Max reaches Vlad and is reunited with another face from the first game, Vinny Gognitti. In the first Max Payne, Vinny Gognitti was Jack Lupino's right-hand man, handling Valkyr deals for the Punchinello family. When Lupino spiraled into madness from abusing Valkyr, the family sent Vinny to rein him in. That didn't work. Instead, Max hunted Vinny down, beating the location of Lupino out of him before leaving him bleeding out in an alley. Turns out Vinny survived. One of the few Punchinello members to make it through Max's rampage, he rose through the ranks, taking Lupino's place as underboss, and reigniting the war between the Mafia and the Russians. After scaring off Vinny and saving Vlad, he fills Max in. Gognitti isn't just taking out rivals in the black market gun trade, he's working with someone powerful. Max questions Vlad's own business ventures, but he brushes him off, assuring him that he's totally legit now. Max doubts him, of course, but he's unsure of Vlad's role in all this, so he heads home to rest. Max makes it home exhausted but unable to shake the weight of the night's events. He collapses onto his couch hoping for rest, but instead he's pulled into a nightmare. The entire chapter is a dream sequence similar to those from the first game, but this time they're more straightforward, shorter, easier to navigate, yet no less unsettling. Max wakes in a twisted version of his apartment, the TV flickering as Address Unknown plays in the background. The eerie dialogue mirrors his own reality, blurring the line between fiction and his subconscious. A photo of Mona is slipped under the door. He opens it, but no one's there. The hallway stretches endlessly ahead, pulling him deeper into the nightmare. Reality bends, doors shift. Suddenly, Max is in the hospital morgue. He steps forward, his eyes locking onto a familiar body, Mona, lifeless in a storage unit. But before he can react, she's suddenly alive, appearing on the autopsy table, telling him to answer the phone. When he does, the voice on the other end is Vlad, reassuring his girlfriend just as he did earlier in the night during the shootout at Vodka. But the voices don't stop. Winterson, Bravura, the scene shifts, Max is in an alley, surrounded. A gun to his head, the NYPD have him cornered. He's a fugitive. He runs, but gunfire erupts behind him. Another shift, Max is in an interrogation room. Winterson questions him, Bravura threatens him, the pressure builds, the walls closing in. Then suddenly, Max snaps. He stands, grabs his gun from the table, and shoots them both. Their bodies hit the ground. Silence. Max jolts awake, back on his couch, groggy, still half-dazed from the nightmare. Then a knock. The same knock from his dream. Instinct takes over, he grabs his gun, swings open the door, and Mona is there to greet him.
I had woken up to a knock at my door. Mona, I was wondering when you'd show up.
Max, I'm not here to kill you. Aren't you going to ask me in?
Mona warns him that they're both in danger. Someone's put contracts out on them. But before she can fully explain, their conversation is interrupted by a sniper. The bullet rips through his apartment as Max ducks for cover. Realizing she was followed, Mona takes off. Max calls Winterson for backup, letting her know unknown attackers are trying to kill him. Leaving his apartment, he goes after Mona, finding a trail of bodies in her wake. Searching for another route out of the building since he can't use the elevator, Max bumps into his neighbor taking out one of the cleaners. Damn, that's pretty hardcore for an old lady. Though I guess it was self-defense. She's a friendly old bird, giving Max a shotgun and some painkillers. I wasn't sure when to bring this up, but now's a good time to talk about Max Payne 2's level design compared to the first. While both games have the same number of chapters, several levels in the sequel are noticeably shorter. Both games are highly linear, but the original Max Payne made up for it with larger, more open-ended environments. Exploring off the intended path often rewarded you with extra weapons or painkillers, or even allowed you to outflank enemies before they could ambush you. Max Payne 2, on the other hand, leans even harder into linearity. The apartment shootout in Part 1 is one of the few levels that still feels like the first game, giving you more room to maneuver. But outside of a handful of exceptions, most levels are far more straightforward, contributing to the game's shorter runtime. While I wouldn't normally complain about a shorter experience, especially fresh off a playthrough of Red Dead Redemption 2, it does make the world feel smaller compared to its predecessor. Also, another thing that's missing are objectives. The first game balanced its gunfights with light environmental puzzles, like finding passcodes for a door, restoring power to a subway, or blowing open an exit to escape a fire. Max Payne 2 still has a few of these moments, but they're far less frequent. The sequel shifts almost entirely into combat, losing some of the variety that made the first game's pacing so strong. As Max keeps moving, he fights his way through more cleaners infesting the building, before finally making it to the sniper's hideout. Inside, he finds surveillance equipment. These guys weren't just hunting him, they'd been tracking him for a while. They recorded his call with Winterson, a message from Lieutenant Bravura trying to help Max by taking him to an AA meeting, and, embarrassingly, a call to a phone sex line. "Hey, I get it, buddy. No judgments from me. Your wife is dead. You got crazy hot Mona Sachs driving you nuts. You're all pent up and just want someone to talk to. There's no shame in that." Before Max can work out why they were watching him, an explosion rips through the building. His apartment is gone, the cleaners having botched an attempt to rig it with explosives. With nowhere to go but up, Max fights his way to the top floor but has to backtrack to the basement and find the janitor who knows the codes to the suites on the 7th floor. Cutting through more cleaners, Max presses on, making his way out the window, carefully moving across even more ledges, before finally finding an open window that leads 2 floors above where his apartment used to be. He climbs inside, stepping out into the hallway, picking up on Mona's trail. Making his way down a stairwell, he comes across a drunken hobo/ex-cop trapped behind a boarded-up door. After helping him out, the guy thanks Max in the most hobo-cop way possible, by offering to help him fight their way out. Sure, why not? Hopefully he lasts longer than Mike the cowboy. We pick up some more help in the form of a prostitute named Violet. There's no getting out from the front of the building, and she tells Max that if he can shut off the gas on the 3rd floor, they can use the building's ledges to escape. Just as they're about to move, cleaners storm in, guns blazing, and surprisingly, our new friends can hold their own against the cleaners, and unlike Mike, they actually make it. After parting ways and successfully escaping, Max heads back to the precinct, where Bravura grills him about the attacks on his apartment and Annie Finn's gun workshop. Max throws Vinny Gognitti under the bus, suggesting the mobster is using the cleaners for hits, but conveniently leaves out Mona's involvement. She was under his skin now. He had to figure out what her part in this whole mess is. Conveniently, she left Max her number, and despite the risk, Mona explains she covered her tracks so the cops couldn't trace her line when Max calls. She gives Max her location, warning him to avoid being followed.
Mona's place was a closed-down funhouse based on a 90s TV show. The show's cancellation had been the kiss of death to it.
Not quite what I was picturing for Mona's safe house, but I guess an abandoned theme park is the last place anyone would think to look for her. Surprisingly, the place is still operational. Cardboard cutouts, flickering lights, eerie sound effects, it's all still running. Max naturally isn't thrilled about it. Something about the place makes his skin crawl, which I don't blame him. A weird Twin Peaks knockoff doesn't really scream theme park material. This chapter is devoid of action. It's just Max traveling through bizarre, twisted corridors, cardboard noir York City, the Pinkbird Mental Institute, and a nightmarish parody of the real world. Eventually he finds Mona's hideout, but instead of knocking like a normal person, he does the next best thing. Climbs outside, scales the building, and breaks in through a window. Looking around inside, Max hears some humming and finds Mona in the middle of a shower.
I'll tell you one thing, Mona, you're no singer.
You've switched tactics. We need to talk.
Bring me a towel, will you? Now that you're here, you can watch my back while I get dressed.
All she had told me was that someone wanted us dead. The way she was acting, I was the only one in danger here.
After Mona gets dressed, she fills Max in on who wants them dead. The Inner Circle, the secret society Max crossed paths with in the first game. Everyone who knows of their existence is being hunted. But Max isn't stupid. He knows Mona isn't telling him everything, but that doesn't stop him from going with her to meet her mysterious contact. As they pull up, Max spots squeaky cleaning company vans parked outside. They're already making a move on Mona's contact. Inside, the lobby is a mess. Bodies everywhere, former security guards who didn't stand a chance. Max tells Mona to stay put and keep watching the building's security system while he heads up alone to find her contact, who happens to be another member of the Inner Circle, a guy named Corcoran. After clearing several floors of cleaners, Max is too late. He finds Corcoran dead in his bedroom. While he can't get any answers from him, Max finds a framed photograph. 5 men standing in front of a manor. Among them Corcoran, Senator Sebastian Gate, and Alfred Woden. Mona wasn't lying. The Inner Circle is indeed involved. With no time to linger, Max starts heading back to the lobby, cutting through more waves of cleaners, until he reaches the elevators and encounters their boss, Kaufman. After taking him and his hit squad out, Max steps into the elevator to return to the lobby and reunite with Mona. It's not the reunion he was expecting though, as the NYPD are there waiting for him too. Mona's been arrested by Winterson. Max's secret has been exposed. Part 1 comes to an end as his partner asks just what the hell he's doing.
What were you thinking? Were you thinking at all?
I was following a lead. She was helping me.
She is a fugitive murder suspect, for Christ's sakes.
I was trying to save those people from the cleaners. The two cases are connected, mine and Winterson's. Senator Gate was killed by the cleaners.
After a verbal lashing from his boss, Max is pulled off the cleaner case. Lieutenant Bravura hands the investigation to Winterson, and relegates Max to desk duty. Frustrated, he wonders if Mona is really worth all this hassle. Sitting down, trying to connect the dots between Winterson's case and his own, his concentration is interrupted when Winterson's phone starts ringing. Max picks up, but the caller immediately hangs up. A nearby officer offhandedly mentions that Winterson has been protective of her calls lately. That's awfully suspicious. Heading into the interrogation room, Winterson is interviewing a witness who saw the chaos that unfolded in the last chapter. He identifies Mona as being present, but when he asks about identifying any of the cleaners that Mona was fighting, Winterson brushes him off and leaves. After briefly speaking to the witness himself, Max returns to his desk and overhears Winterson leaking case details over the phone. When confronted, she brushes him off, claiming she's just informing the proper authorities, before storming into Bravura's office. Proper authorities? Isn't that your job, Winterson? Well, pretty obvious she's dirty. Not the smartest move to leak case details from your own desk. You think a detective of her pedigree would go find a payphone instead? But I guess she isn't as competent as she pretends to be. Max heads downstairs to the lockup to see Mona. She warns him that staying in one place makes her an easy target, and tells him to reach out to Alfred Woden. He can verify everything. Max calls Woden's office, but before he can leave a full message, an explosion rips through the precinct. The cleaners have stormed the station. Through a security monitor, Max sees Mona escape from her cell just as the assassins arrive. Fighting through the chaos, he clears out the remaining cleaners in the garage before rushing outside only to find Vlad pulling up in his car.
Have no fear, Vlad is here. The world was getting too small for comfort. Too many coincidences.
Bang! You're dead, Max Payne.
Max is suspicious of Vlad's perfect timing, but with no other way out, he gets in. Inside, he immediately notices a massive Captain Baseball Bat Boy costume. Vlad calls it a Trojan horse for his war against Vinny Gognitti. As they drive, Max brings up the inner circle, but Vlad dismisses them as nothing more than another rung in the crime ladder. Vlad drops Max off near Mona's hideout before taking his leave. Max then confronts her about her part in all this. Or he tries to. Frustrated, and the sexual tension between the two finally boiling over, Max and Mona give in to their desires.
I want to sleep to forget, to change the past. My wife and baby girl back. Unlimited ammo and a license to kill. Right then, more than anything, I wanted her.
But before he can really get physical, Max gets blueballed by the arrival of the cleaners. They must have followed him here from the precinct. The pair make a run for the upstairs apartment, but the scaffolding collapses beneath Max, separating him from Mona. Running through the theme park, he'll clear out waves of cleaners, with Mona occasionally giving cover fire. Making it back outside, Max spots a cleaner van trying to escape, and hops aboard to follow them back to their base, forced to leave Mona behind. But he keeps in contact with her using the radio she gave him earlier. Arriving at a construction site, Max escapes the van, overhearing a conversation between cleaners. They mention some evidence being taken to the top floor. Figuring it's worth investigating, Max makes his presence known and he starts gunning down cleaners on his way up the building. Mona will check in on his progress and arrive at the construction site soon after. After a while, Max stumbles upon a huge stockpile of guns and ammo, most likely stolen from Vlad's warehouse. At the top floor, Max finds something chilling. A room full of bodies, evidence of every murder they've committed, stored away. Too much to ignore. Realizing things are bigger than he can handle, Max pulls a desperation move and asks Mona to call the police. She shuts that idea down immediately. She's still a fugitive after all. Before he completes his case though, Mona abruptly goes silent. Max doesn't have time to argue. More cleaners suddenly enter the room and open fire. But they got a little overzealous and realized their mistake too late. as they accidentally hit the explosives in the room. A massive explosion erupts, sending flames ripping through the building. The entire place is coming down. Max sprints for an exit, dodging collapsing floors and trying to stay ahead of the inferno. Any cleaners not stupid enough to try and kill Max are either dead or scrambling to escape too. Barely outrunning the flames and explosions, Max spots a large open window. It's his only shot. With the fire at his back, he dives out, latching onto a scaffolding bar. He barely has a second to breathe before a final massive explosion rocks the building, blasting him off the scaffolding. Max plummets below, breaking his fall as he crashes through planks of wood before hitting the ground. Oof, I know this doesn't kill him, but it's gotta fuck up his back pretty bad. The last thing he sees is a board collapsing on top of him, then darkness.
She had arrived to the site while I was inside the condemned building. I don't know what went on with her.
Max, I'm at the site. Where are you?
Things then rewind to when Mona first arrived at the construction site. We now play as her as she tries to make it to Max's position. Outside of her Dragunov sniper rifle, there isn't anything unique to playing as Mona. While I dig that she's as capable as Max and can use bullet time too, this would have been a great opportunity to shake up the gameplay. Maybe turn Mona's section into full-on stealth levels where you have to avoid getting noticed, and have to pull off stealth kills. Or just remove the option for bullet time with her, putting a bigger focus on positioning and fast kills since you can't shoot dodge to keep yourself alive. I would have preferred that over the babysitting section that follows. From a ledge overlooking the construction site, Mona arrives just as Max is blown off the scaffolding and knocked down below. Alive but in rough shape, cleaners start closing in on his position, so Mona needs to cover Max and pick them off before he bites it for real. It's a frustrating section that goes on for a while, with Mona constantly having to leave and find a better position to keep him alive, while also keeping herself alive. And due to the wide open area, it can be easy to overlook a new enemy spawning and attacking Max, so he can die fast if you're not careful. Eventually Max finds an unlocked door where he can finally escape, and Mona will continue moving through the construction site to his position. Finding a lift, she rides it up to rendezvous with Max, but before she can reach him, a figure emerges from the shadows as she steps off the lift. It's Winterson. Max arrives as his partner points her gun at Mona. He tries to talk her down, but she refuses. Mona insists Winterson is dirty and is going to kill her no matter what. As things spiral out of control, a gun suddenly goes off, and Winterson goes down. Max shot her. Finally answering the lingering question from the beginning of the game, he really did kill Winterson, and he did it for Mona.
Go! Go, run! Mona! Over here! Hold it! Detective Winterson? Officer down! He went over the edge!
The genius of the hole. No matter how long you spend climbing out, you can still fall back down in an instant.
In bad shape from all his injuries and the gunshots from Winterson, Max blacks out and his mind traps him in a nightmare, a twisted reflection of his fears, his guilt, and the unraveling reality he's been trying to make sense of. He dreams of his wife, that he murdered her for his lover, though his wife is just a stand-in for Winterson. He killed his seemingly good partner for a woman Max doesn't even really trust. A vision of Mona straddles him as he's wheeled into the hospital, a warped vision of desire. Waking within his dream, Max sees her again. She takes off and he chases her down endless hospital corridors until suddenly he finds himself in the Pink Bird Mental Institute, a location ripped straight from Address Unknown, the show that's haunted him like an echo of his own fractured mind. Cells line the walls, each one holding a different version of Max. They embody his paranoia, the lingering grief and guilt over the death of his family, his rage and thirst for revenge, and finally Max's self-doubt. Following Mona's voice, he's then taken to the precinct, now engulfed in flames from the aftermath of the attack from the cleaners. Passing by the bodies of his fellow officers, Max finds Jim Bravura, slumped against a wall and bleeding out. The old detective tells him to solve the case and find out who betrayed them. With those final words, the lieutenant slumps over dead. Max moves on, reaching his old desk at the station, where he finds Winterson and Mona. Both argue not to trust the other. Max is caught between them, and before he can make sense of anything, they both turn their guns on him and pull the trigger, ending the dream. The game briefly flashes back to the present, Max at the manor during a raging storm with the NYPD surrounding the place. It then shifts back to Max at the hospital earlier in the night, standing over Winterson's body. No more excuses or trying to find someone else to blame. Max accepts that he killed her. As he downs some painkillers, he finds a card for Vlad's restaurant vodka, a lead he can't ignore. But he's cornered. A cleaning commando is waiting outside ready to kill him. Since Max lost his pistols back when the elevator exploded, he's defenseless. Luckily, the guy is pretty inept, as Max will easily knock him over after opening the door, and escape by running up the stairs. However, the threat isn't over, as the cleaners have the hospital locked down and are gunning down anyone they find. Cornered in a cubicle-filled office, Max hides as 2 commandos search for him. A security guard tries to take them on, but is quickly executed. Don't worry, nameless security guard. I'll avenge you. Taking the guy's gun, Max can start fighting back. I didn't realize this when I went through the level, but in the security room there's a video feed showing that Lieutenant Bravura is still alive after getting shot, and is currently in surgery. I kinda just assumed the old guy was dead by the end of the game, but I guess not. After clearing out the hospital, Max heads down to the parking garage to finish off the last of the cleaners. Having survived the ordeal, Max is reinvigorated and focused on solving the case. He tries searching for Mona, but comes up empty, so instead he drives to Alfred Woden's manor for answers. Woden, sick and dying of cancer, confirms that the inner circle has been betrayed from within. Max suspects Vinny Gognitti, but Woden corrects him. Vlad has been the real mastermind all along. Not only that, but he's a member of the inner circle too. With Woden dying, Vlad made a power grab to take control of the circle, killing any members who refused to follow him. Max then realizes the cleaners were working for him all along too. Vlad sacrificed his gunsmith Annie to make it look like Vinny Gognitti was instigating a mob war to throw Max off his trail. With Vlad's scheme almost complete, Gognitti's next on his hit list, and once he's gone, Woden himself is the final target. Max now has only one option: find Vlad before it's too late. Max heads out to Vodka to confront his dearest friend. After fighting waves of Russian goons, and Mike the Cowboy if he didn't die earlier, Vlad is nowhere to be seen. Max finds something else though when listening to a message on his answering machine. It's Winterson. She's trying to reach Vlad and tells him she's heading to the construction site to take care of Max and Mona. As the message continues, we learn Vlad is Winterson's boyfriend. She knows she's committing a crime, but questions if it's wrong to be happy, to turn her back on the law for someone she loves, who loves her and takes care of her son. This doesn't absolve Max of his guilt for killing her. In fact, it makes it worse. After all, he was doing the exact same thing by helping Mona. Heading to Vinny Gognitti's place, Max drives straight into the middle of a mob war between the Russians and the Mafia. Caught in the crossfire, Max is forced to huff it on foot after his van is taken out. Killing men on both sides of the mob war, Max eventually stumbles into a group of 3 mobsters who thinks he's their backup. He'll team up with them to fight out the Russians, but after another mobster recognizes who he is, Max is forced to gun down his new buddies. Oh well, arrivederci. After some more shootouts, Max finally finds Vinny, though the mafioso underboss has got a problem. He's stuck inside a giant Captain Baseball Bat Boy costume.
No, Payne, not you! Why does this keep happening to me? Payne, you gotta help me. There's a freaking bomb in here. If I take the head off, it blows. Bye-bye, Vinny. You're a freaking cop. You gotta help me.
How did this happen?
Gognitti, visibly panicked, explains that Vlad tricked him into the suit, which is rigged with a bomb set to explode if he tries to take it off. That's what that drawing of Captain Baseball Bat Boy in Vlad's office was all about. He exploited Vinny's love of the character to lure him into a trap. Desperate, Vinny offers to help Max take down Vlad if he gets him out of this mess. Max agrees, throwing us into an escort mission, which honestly isn't too bad. Vinny typically finds a spot to take cover when firefights break out, and will stay there until you clear out the threat. So as long as you're quick in taking out anyone who pops up and stay close to Vinny when he starts moving, you won't have to worry about him dying. Due to the size of his costume, Max is forced to take the long way around to get Vinny to safety. Finding a service elevator, they take it up to Gognitti's apartment, which is filled with tons of Captain Baseball Bat Boy collectibles. With nowhere else to go, they head out to the balcony where Vinny can climb down to the street. Taking out a few more waves of attackers, Max gets Vinny to his private garage. With the path clear, they take Vinny's car and head for Mona's apartment, hoping she can defuse the bomb. But when they arrive at the funhouse, Vlad is already waiting. Holding the detonator, he gives Max a simple choice: drop the gun or watch Gognitti explode. From a nearby rooftop, Mona has Vlad in her sights, but before she can pull the trigger, he detonates the bomb, blowing Vinny to pieces. The explosion sets the entire funhouse ablaze, but instead of chasing Vlad, Mona rushes in to save Max. Aww. I guess she does have a thing for him too. This level is one of the few times you have to interact with your surroundings in order to proceed. First, Mona will have to pull the fire alarm to turn on the sprinklers in order to get past an area blocked by flames, and then look for the generator to reset it to get past an area overloaded with electricity. It's small stuff, but I wish the game had more moments that needed you to explore the level to find a way to clear an obstacle and proceed. After Mona restores the power, a path upstairs opens. Climbing through wreckage and twisted metal, she reaches what's left of Vinny Gognitti. Oof. Rest in pieces, buddy. Pushing on, she finds Max unconscious in her apartment, bleeding out. Without hesitation, she drops to her knees and begins giving him CPR, desperately trying to bring him back. Flashing back to what happened before Vinny exploded, Vlad has Max at his mercy. He explains Mona's role in all this. She was working for Woden the entire time, hired to fight for his side in his war against Vlad. Then Vlad confirms what we already know, that Winterson was his lover. And it looks like he may have actually loved her and wasn't just using her either, as he takes revenge for her death by shooting Max in the head. Everything fades to black and Max plunges into another nightmare, or a dying dream considering he just took a bullet to the brain. He finds himself in a decaying apartment building, staring at Jim Bravura, who stands over a half-covered corpse. His corpse. The scene shifts, now Bravura is on an operating table in the police precinct, gasping out that the suspect is in the interrogation room before dying. When Max enters the room, his own reflection stares back and suddenly opens fire. Reality fractures as he chases his double through the halls of his mind, seeing twisted visions of his past. Stopping to watch a TV in the lobby, it's Vinny Gognitti, humiliated in the bomb-rigged Captain Baseball bat suit, failing Vlad's sadistic trivia game before being blown to bits. Then Mona, standing face to face with Vlad, shooting him in the arm when he tries to recruit her. I didn't bring it up, but for a good portion of the game, one of Vlad's arms is bandaged up. Something Max asks him about, but Vlad brushes off what happened. So that was our first hint that he was up to no good. Finally, Mona appears before Max. She tells him to wake up. As she kisses him, the power of love and CPR bring him back to the world of the living. Escaping the funhouse, Max knows Vlad has only one target left, Alfred Woden. Mona tries to stop him, saying this isn't his fight, and he can walk away. Max doesn't care. He's seeing this mess to the end.
Vlad was right. There are no choices. Nothing but a straight line. The illusion comes afterwards, when you ask why me, and what if. When you look back, see the branches, like a pruned bonsai tree, or a forked lightning. If you had done something differently, it wouldn't be you. It would be someone else looking back, asking a different set of questions.
Max and Mona race to Woden's manor, only to find cleaner commandos swarming the estate. As they scale the perimeter wall, they're spotted. Gunfire erupts, forcing them to split up. Max charges through the front door, while Mona sneaks in through another entrance. Explosions rock the manor as Max fights his way through waves of cleaners, navigating through a courtyard, a massive library, and a dining hall, gunning down anyone in his path. Meanwhile, Mona moves through the upper floors, eliminating guards silently. With Vlad seemingly on the cusp of victory in the war for control of the inner circle, Woden's own bodyguards have betrayed him and switched sides. On top of trying to stop Max, they give up their boss's location to Vlad. Woden is hiding deep in the manor in his panic room. Max and Mona regroup, reaching a locked door. Mona reveals a secret switch, opening a passage forward. Confirming what Vlad had said, she had been working for Woden all along. Max confronts her, but before he can press for answers, she knocks him out. Max wakes up on his knees, dazed, with Mona pointing a gun at him. Over the manor's security camera, she whispers to Woden that she can't do it. She had fallen in love with Max. And then suddenly, a gunshot. Mona collapses into Max's arms, bleeding out. Vlad steps forward, musing that he was hoping the two lovebirds would kill each other. Before Max can react, Woden himself appears, apologizing to Max and trying to call an end to the violence.
The killing has gone too far.
I have only begun. It's better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
You flatter yourself.
Demented fool!
Honestly, I don't know what the hell he was thinking. You think he would have had a surprise attack like that better thought out, so he could like stab Vlad in the neck or something? But this does give Max an opening to charge at Vlad, tackling him as the Russian mobster hits the detonator. Explosions rip through the floor, plunging both men into the manor's cellar. Recovering first, Vlad flees into the underground vaults. Grabbing Vlad's discarded Desert Eagle, Max promises to find him and kill him with it. Explosions continue collapsing the estate as Max carves a bloody path through Vlad's remaining men, eventually catching up to him.
What the fuck is wrong with you, Max? Why don't you just die? You hate life. You're miserable all the time. Afraid to enjoy yourself even a little. Face it, you might as well be dead already. Do yourself a favor. Give up.
While harsh, Vlad is pretty spot on about Max. What he fails to realize, though, is that despite his self-loathing and how much he punishes himself, giving up would ultimately prove him right. That Max doesn't deserve to forgive himself, deserve to move on, or to come to peace with everything that's happened. Chasing after Vlad and taking out more of his men, Max eventually arrives in Woden's office. There, he finds a cache of weapons, painkillers, and recordings. First is a message from Mona, telling Woden she couldn't kill Max. The next is one from Vlad, promising to finish the job himself. And finally, a report from NYNN. Lieutenant Bravura survived. Gripping his gun, Max rides the elevator to the top of the manor, where Vlad waits, taking us into the game's only boss fight. The Russian throws Molotovs, firing at Max from above, but we have no way to actually shoot Vlad. Instead, you have to fire at the bolts holding up the platform he's on. Once you knock him out, he'll tumble down, but still don't have a clear shot on him. Now you have to aim for the bolts holding up the spike hovering above him. And then after knocking that loose, Vlad narrowly manages to avoid it. Now you'll be able to actually shoot him. And once you pumped enough lead into Vlad, it's all over. The glass dome he's standing on caves and he goes tumbling down into the inferno below. Max stumbles back to Mona, bleeding out. She smiles weakly, lamenting that in the end she was still a damsel in distress. Then she's gone. The NYPD arrives soon after. Officers comb through the wreckage, finding only one survivor. Max walks out, his fate uncertain, but for the first time his past no longer haunts him. He's finally found some closure and learned to start forgiving himself.
I had a dream of my wife. She was dead, but it was all right.
And that was Max Payne 2: The Fall of Max Payne. I should mention that if you beat the game on the Dead on Arrival difficulty, then you'll get an alternate ending where Mona survives. But it's non-canon since she's confirmed dead in Max Payne 3. Coming back to this game after all these years, I can finally say with confidence, it's a good game and a worthy sequel to the original. But at the same time, it just slightly misses the mark. On a technical level, Max Payne 2 improves nearly everything from the first game. The gunplay is smoother, bullet time is more refined, and the visuals and physics engines make shootouts more dynamic and cinematic than ever. The story is also more focused, stripping away some of the more surreal, mythological influences of the original, in favor of a tighter, noir-inspired tragic love story. But in doing that, it lost some of what made the first game truly special. Max Payne wasn't just a noir shooter, it was an offbeat, self-aware homage and parody of the genre all at once. The exaggerated, overly dramatic dialogue, the strange mix of Norse mythology and crime fiction, the absurd yet endearing side characters, it gave the game a distinct charm that Max Payne 2 dials back significantly. The humor is still there in places, but it's more subtle, more restrained. The level design also feels more streamlined, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does make exploration and encounter variety less engaging than the original. And with a shorter runtime of around 6 to 8 hours, the story, while strong, feels like it could have used a few more hours to fully flesh itself out. A little more room to breathe, a few extra sequences to let certain themes and relationships develop just a bit further, and Max Payne 2 could have been perfect. What holds the fall of Max Payne back the most is that it refines the first game's foundation but doesn't build on it. Instead of evolving or innovating, it mostly polishes what was already there to near perfection. While that makes for a damn good sequel, it also doesn't feel as bold or groundbreaking as the original. If it had taken more risks, expanded its mechanics, or introduced new elements, it could have been something truly next level. At the end of the day, The Fall of Max Payne is a fantastic game, and still better than Max Payne 3 in a lot of ways, but what it doesn't do is leave the same impact as the first or the third game. The first game was raw, bold, and unique. The third was a complete reinvention, divisive, very divisive, yet unforgettable. But Max Payne 2, it sits somewhere in between. It's still good, but just missing that special something that makes it more memorable. Still, if you're a fan of third-person shooters, noir storytelling, or just want to see the next chapter of Max's tragic life unfold, or end technically if you look at Max Payne 3 as non-canon, Max Payne 2 is absolutely worth playing. Just don't expect it to hit quite as hard as the first. And that's the video. Thanks for watching, folks. And special thanks to my channel members and patrons, including Alfred Correa, Augie Doggy, Bailey Morrison, Chicken D Samurai, Eric Lee, Miles Garrett, Skillfuse, SR Power, and Reckless Nerd. Happy 2025, everyone. I know I'm late by like a month in saying that, but the Red Dead 2 video left me drained and seriously behind schedule. I'm back on track again and planning out everything I want to do for the next few months. I'd planned to do a dedicated channel update video since I haven't done one in over a year. And it was meant to close out 2024, but again, I fell behind schedule. I don't really like relegating updates and channel discussion to just a community post, but since only a portion of my subs would watch the video one way or the other, it would basically have the same effect. Nothing major to announce at the moment. I have some things I'm mulling over that I want to do, but I want to wait till I actually get those ideas moving first before I announce them. While sub growth was a bit slow last year and I didn't reach my goal of hitting that 100k subs before 2025, overall, channel views actually grew a lot. Most of the new stuff from 2024 are pretty in line with my channel size, but a good chunk of my older stuff blew up. Thank you, GTA 5. I may not be your biggest fan, but the views and ad revenue from your video will keep me fed for a long time. Fingers crossed, Red Dead 2 has legs just as long. I think I'm going to touch base more with you guys on what you'd like to see me cover in the future, so expect more polls. Next video is on the final season of The Walking Dead, and after that it's going to be Watch Dogs 2. And while experimenting with different series hasn't done crazy numbers, I do still want to do that every once in a while. So for example, I want to cover another Final Fantasy game in the future. Maybe several actually. I do still want to look at more Final Fantasy VII spin-offs, sequels like Dirge of Cerberus, which is kinda more in line with my channel's usual stuff, and prequels like Crisis Core, which isn't. I'm also going to try and pick up streaming again, and make it more of a consistent part of my channel. Probably do it on Twitch too. Would be a great way to kill two birds with one stone, chill and chat with you guys while also recording footage for the channel. I just need a good time that works for me. Otherwise, not much else to report. So this channel will continue to truck along business as usual. I've been working on being more disciplined and scheduling out my plans far in advance, so hopefully I can avoid any major schedule slip-ups. I appreciate that you all understand and don't rush me, but still I want to be consistent and deliver on time. Again, thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and comment down below. Which Max Payne game is your favorite? Do you like Max Payne 3 for what it is, or think it's an affront to the first two games? Or do you have the reverse opinion and think 3 is better than the first two? Post your thoughts down below. And if you're new to the channel, I'd love your support and if you subscribed. I can feel it that this year we're going to get that silver plaque and make it to 100k subs. So every sub is appreciated. Check out whatever the recommended video is here at the end, or my nearly 5-hour video on Red Dead Redemption 2, or my playlist covering all the GTA games I've reviewed. I'm FuzzySlippers, and I'll see you later. Peace.